friends, welcome back to another pottery tutorial. I'm super excited to be filming this video today because number one, I haven't done a video like this in a while. It's always been these talking videos. And also I've never made one of these before. I mean, this was a request by one of you guys and I think I know how to make it. I think it was gonna be pretty simple, but I guess we'll find out. So let's get started with our painter's palette. So for this project, you're going to need a wedging board or some other porous surface so you can put down some cloth or use a untreated piece of wood. You will also need two stiff flat things. So I'm using two wear boards. So this is just like a wooden board that we actually use in our pottery. But if you don't have something like this, you can also use like a hardcover book. Just put some wax paper over the book so you don't damage your book. You will also need two 1 centimeter thickness gauges, or as I'm doing, 4 half centimeter thickness gauges, so I'm just going to stack these and then they'll become 1 centimeter. Additionally, you will need a rolling pin, a knife, and a carving tool. So I'm going to use these two different types of carving tools. I'm not sure exactly which one I'm going to use in the end, but I grabbed these two from the studio, so I have some options to work with and I'll let you know which one works the best. And then of course you're going to need some clay, so I'm using a speckled stoneware clay. First, I'll roll out a slab. I'll use my thickness gauges to make sure I don't roll my slab thinner than 1 centimeter thick. Then I'll use a rib to compress the slab. After that, I'm going to sandwich my slab between the two wear boards. I want it to dry out a little so it will be stiffer and easier to carve. So you should let it dry between the wear boards for at least a couple hours. You can also let it sit overnight. Once my slab has stiffened up a little, I'll use a pencil to sketch out what I want to carve. Then I'll use my knife to cut out the shape and use my finger to smooth the edges. Then I'm going to start in with my carving tools. I'm going to start with a narrow tool first to carve out the edges of my paint wells. Once those are all carved out, I'll use my wider carving tool to carve out the middle. And then I'll use my finger to smooth out those edges. So as I thought, getting these bottoms to be even is actually going to be the hardest part. At least it's really tricky for me. You want to make sure you're going deep, like evenly deep, which is really tricky. Maybe if my piece was a little bit drier, like maybe you want to wait like overnight to get your piece pretty firm, but not too firm because it might be hard to carve through then. But yeah, just keep that in mind. My bottoms are not very even at all. I'm gonna go over them with the sponge later, but so far I'm just kind of squishing the clay around to try and even them out. I'll also be really careful that you're not poking through the bottom with your tool. That would be tragic. So you can see here the two that I've carved and then smoothed out with my finger. The remaining 3 I've carved, but I haven't smoothed out yet. Take your time smoothing out each well. Try and get it as smooth as possible with your finger. You can also use a sponge and some water to smooth it out too. But be careful not to add too much water. If you have a wooden tool, you can also use that to get into the edges where your finger can't fit. Once it's looking good, transfer your palette onto the wear board with some paper in between. Okay, so I finished this pretty much, I think, as far as I'm going to go. Oh, Jesus. So you want to just keep smoothing until you're happy with it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let it dry out, and I've got some scrap paper on the bottom of it, just above a board, and then I'm going to put another piece of scrap paper on top of it and another board on top. The paper is there for it to actually get some air, because if you set it right on the board, these boards aren't very porous, so they'll probably just stop it from drying completely. The paper will let it kind of breathe a little bit more, and it will soak up some of the water. And we're going to dry between two boards so it doesn't warp. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this turns out. It looks great for a first try anyway. I like that it looks a bit like a citrus fruit. So yeah, I'm going to let this dry out between the boards, as I said, and then I'm going to transport it to the studio for firing and glazing. And then I'll show you how it looks like after it's done right now. Alright guys, so I have my paint palette finished and I'm so happy with how it turned out. So I decided to go with a white glaze so that one can see, you know, with the paint. Yeah, it's a bit like wobbly, so I definitely should have dried it under pressure for a bit longer. I just transported it to the studio a little bit too soon, and yeah, anyway. If you don't want a wobbly one, just let it dry slower and longer under pressure. But I think it's actually okay. I mean, it functions. And I'm really happy to have this now because I actually just bought some watercolor paint, so I'm going to have some fun with this paint palette. Alright guys, that's it for me today. If you want to learn more about me and my studio, you can find me on Instagram over at Pottery to the People. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Bye friends!